Okay, here we go. On 3. 1, 2. Whoa, whiskey! Whiskey! Whiskey!
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am Paul Caputo, sportslogos.net minor league baseball correspondent, broadcasting live, as always, from the Helmet Sunday Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Very excited today to be talking about one of the best brands in minor league baseball, the Bowling Green Hot Rods. So first, I have to say I'm joined right now by Eric Leach, who is the award-winning general manager of the Bowling Green Hot Rods, including just yesterday, at the time of this recording, you won another award. You've won Outstanding General Manager of the Year award previously, but yesterday you won an award. So, Eric, award-winning general manager of the Bowling Green Hot Rods, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Great to be here, Paul. And honestly, that award yesterday meant the world to us because it was the truest Spirit of the Community award. So award given to a business about what we give back into the community and how much philanthropic work we do. And while winning championships is awesome, we control nothing on the field. I'm not batting. I'm not doing any of that. So this award really indicative of my front office staff and how much time and effort they give back to Bowling Green.
So this is something that I've actually pointed out about Bowling Green a number of times when I talk about minor league baseball and the place that the teams have in the community. So we'll talk about your awesome, car-based brand and some of the alternates that you do. But I do want to talk about just first the place that the team has in the community, and sort of emblematic of that was when the terrible tornadoes tore through the Midwest and wreaked havoc, caused all sorts of damage and death. It was such a tragedy. The Hot Rods reached out to the community and said something along the lines of, hey, if any business needs a place to call home base, as it were, we have suites available to you. You can just come and use our suites. And I just thought, it was one of the first things I saw after the tornadoes came through was that the Hot Rods were making this offer. So, can you talk about just sort of what you see as the Hot Rods place in the community, and did anyone actually take you up on that? Did they end up using your suites?
Yeah, and in fact, that really stemmed from the day after the tornadoes, allow first responders to get into the immediate areas. But that Sunday, a group of friends of mine, we have chainsaws. We went out helping out some of my coworkers had trees down in their yards. So went and helped them, went and helped out neighbors. And I took my 11-year-old son because he was at home complaining about no internet. And I wanted to provide a lesson in, just learning why it's going on, why you have no internet, but more importantly, those who lost everything. So he went out and helped me. And on the way home, he was like, Dad, thank you so much for taking me. And he goes, what else can we do? And so as I got home, that question just kind of resonated. And so I did some research. Hey, do the first responders need food, water? And it seemed like all those needs were met. And I'm like, we have all these suites. And so it was a simple tweet of, hey, small business owners, we have a space, so why not utilize it? And next thing I knew, it blew up on the internet. Several prominent media members retweeted it, and sure enough, we had 4 businesses take advantage of it. One stayed about an entire month until they could get back in, and so we opened our doors and just had people coming in and out, and literally just good faith humanity, handing them a key and saying, my place is your place while you guys recover. And I know it meant the world to them. And for some of them, they were able to sustain their business during that time.
Well, it's incredible. It's an incredible thing that the team did. And I'm glad to start with that. And so the award you won yesterday, and I apologize for not having the actual name of it. What was the name of the award that you won yesterday?
The truest Spirit of the Community award. And so it's goes beyond just the tornadoes. It's all the charity walks, all the things that we do out here for various organizations. A lot of times we do it pro bono. And Paul, that comes from, I have a saying that when I got here, you're only as important to the community as you are involved in it. And so instead of just take, we give, because when I got here 9 years ago, I had people say, oh, the Hot Rods aren't even going to make 10 years in Bowling Green. They're going to move this and that. And I was like, well, what would happen if we did move? Would people miss us? And now we're so entrenched in the community that people would be heartbroken if the Hot Rods were to ever leave. And when minor league baseball went through the cuts and everything else, we're the 3rd smallest market in the country. and we're a little bit remote from everybody else, but we have such a great relationship with the Rays, and the way we kind of blend with them and really take care of everything here is why such a small town still exists in minor league baseball.
Well, and I can tell you that that ethos extends to all scales with this team, and I know this personally because you have on two separate occasions reached out to me unsolicited to offer things to me just out of the kindness of your heart. The first time was I had tweeted out that our Baseball Palooza 2019 was coming through the Midwest area, and one of our stops was the Bowling Green Hot Rods. And to this day, we've been doing the Baseball Palooza since 2014. To this day, you are the only general manager, you're the only team to reach out and just offer tickets. Just say, hey, we got tickets for you, come on by. And sure enough, there were 10 tickets waiting for us, and you didn't have to do that. That was just a purely kind thing to do. We tried to make it worth your while by spending a ton of money in the gift shop. We tried to. But then the other time was, again, you just reached out to me. You sent me a Twitter message, and it was after the 2020 season had been canceled because of COVID-19. And you know that I collect helmet Sundays, and you had a stack of 2020 Midwest League All-Star Game helmets, which were, the All-Star Game was meant to be held in Bowling Green in 2020. And obviously the whole season was canceled. And then for a long time, the Midwest League was just gone. It was, it was the geographical signifiers that they used for, the 2021 season. So thank goodness the Midwest League is back. But it was just so kind of you. I just remember it was like so kind to just unsolicited say, hey, I've got these helmets, I'm going to send them to you. And sure enough, you did. And so they're featured prominently in the collection.
I have a lot of fond memories. I was a collector as a kid, and also would go on sports trips with my dad and brothers and friends. And my dad passed away about 3 years ago, and I have those memories, and that's what cherishes me. Is I don't remember the scores of the games. I remember a few of the scores of the games that I went to with my dad, but it's all those fun memories, and those baseball trips are something epic. And I highly encourage fans to go do it, because that is just great enjoyment. And the funny stories that come along with all those trips. I'm sure you have tons of those from your adventures, and that's what we are. We're in the memory making business, and baseball is a core product of that. But 10 years from now, nobody's going to remember a lot of the hot rod scores, but they're going to remember getting that foul ball. They're going to remember meeting this mascot, or those variety of things. And so that's what I love about this, and that's why I love giving back just randomly to people. And and it makes the difference. And it's a little self-serving, Paul, because I get fulfillment out of that. And as I light up somebody else's day, it makes me feel good about what we do here.
Well, if that's what brings you joy, then the system works for everybody there, because it's just, I always point to the Bowling Green Hot Rods as sort of the pinnacle of minor league baseball, the community of minor league baseball, and just the, how you approach, you as a general manager and the Bowling Green Hot Rods as a team approach the overall, just, I'll use this word again, the ethos of what minor league baseball means to all of us. And so certainly the Baseball Palooza guys remember, and that whenever I look at that Hot Rods helmet in the collection, it just brings me joy, because it makes me think of that kindness. So, but let's talk. This is a podcast about branding. It's a podcast about logos and nicknames and what they mean to the local community. The Hot Rods have been around since 2009. You've had a couple of different iterations of your logo created by different designers. So you had the 2009 to 2015 that was created by Brandios. And then 2016 to 2021, you had a much more sort of stylized orange and blue look, some of which still is part of your overall suite. I had to go back. I went back and looked at the sportslogos.net article that I wrote on it, and it was a firm called SME Branding. So, but then 2022, you worked with Brandon Lamarche, who I'll be speaking with in the next segment of this podcast, and you unveiled 2 new looks that complement the existing look, essentially. So I'll talk to Brandon about that look in particular, but can you talk about what it is about hot rods in general and the automotive industry that's appropriate to the community of Bowling Green?
Yeah, the hot rods are quintessential to Bowling Green. You have the Corvette Museum and the Corvette plant. So you have America's renowned muscle car being manufactured right here in Bowling Green. And I believe it's the 25th or 30th anniversary of the Corvette Museum being here. But in addition to that, you have Holly Automotive Parts, and there's a racetrack here, a drag strip called Beachman, And so about twice a month, they're having races out here from the Tri Fives, which is the 54, 55, 56 Chevys, to Corvettes, to Camaros and Mustang weekends. So you have all this car culture. And so, really, with Corvettes being manufactured here, Hot Rods was a great acronym and nickname to come up with. And then through the branding and the changing of it, really, we wanted to get back to kind of the power hot rod, the classic hot rod look. And so that's what really precipitated us making that change for this year and working with Brandon on coming up with a new kind of car identity. And the side part of that, Paul, was we love the navy and we love the orange, but we really didn't have a third color. And so with the 10-year agreement with the Tampa Bay Rays, we had done some baby blue in the past. And so we wanted to bring back that color so we would have a third color in our palette. And so we were able to accomplish that.
Great. Well, and so you mentioned Brandon, and I have to ask you, because I this is something we were chatting about in the sort of pre-interview conversation here. Can you talk about how it came to pass that you worked with Brandon Lamarche to create the most recent marks in your suite?
Yeah, in fact, Brandon was an intern for us years and years ago. I believe it was either 2014 or 2015 when he was on staff. And so his father was the general manager of the Corvette plant. And through a series of events, Brandon fell into our laps. And so he was actually an account exec selling tickets and doing that. But he loved the design. And so he kept doing the design work. And then he started showing me some things. And sure enough, I went to Brandon and I said, hey, I've had this concept, this idea to do the Bowling Green bootleggers as an alternate identity. And he's like, let me tackle it. And so he and I worked really closely hand in hand and came up with the bootleggers identity. And ever since that day, Brandon has been designing for us and coming up with our logos all the way from the Bowling Green sinkholes to the Bolitos and the new logos and in the All-Star, all the All-Star logos of the greatest game that never happened was his design work. And so he's tremendous at what he does. In fact, he had a full-time job and he ended up stepping away to do nothing but design work full-time. So a great resource. And he and I have that type of relationship. He knows what style I like, but yet I give him creative freedom and we tweak back and forth.
Well, that's such a fun story, and I'll look forward to talking to Brandon about that for sure. I love that connection. But you mentioned a couple of your alternate brands here, and I definitely want to dig into what they mean because they're all part of the story too. When we logged on, you're wearing the bootleggers cap and the bootleggers hoodie sweatshirt. Can you tell me about the bootleggers identity and what it means to the local community?
Yes, of course. Everybody kind of knows bootlegging, and Kentucky is bourbon country. I mean, it is the American whiskey, and of course, here in Kentucky, we call it the bourbon. And bourbon can only be made, true bourbon, here in the state of Kentucky. But you've also got, the moonshiners in the back fields, and I learned that very quickly when season ticket holder brought me a gift when I was brand new on staff, and I opened it up, and it is white lightning, straight moonshine off a still in somebody's backwoods holler. And so bootlegging is a thing. And so we're like, why not have fun with it? So we came up with the idea and we did a single game standoff as bootleggers and ended up winning promotion of the year in minor league baseball. And so we brought that back the following year. And then eventually now every single Thursday we play as the bootleggers. And it's of course, our dollar beer and $3 drink special night. And so that identity has just become a fabric of who we are. And occasionally there's a fan who shows up and they're like, I thought you guys were the hot rods and you're playing as the bootleggers. And so you have to explain that. And we've had some fans that are like, you know what, we wish you'd go to the bootleggers full time. That's not going to happen, but it is a great alt brand. And now you see that trend all across minor league baseball with the alternate brands, some food related, some drink related.
Well, it's such a fun logo, right? Like the one, my favorite is the sort of old timey sort of hobo looking guy, on top of the barrel with this big smile and his big beard and this sort of raggedy hat. And it looks like he's riding the barrel of bourbon, right? Like, and so that's Brandon who came up with those logos.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, that's great. I'll talk to him about that too. Then the other or an other alternate identity that you have is the sinkholes, which is just a hilarious, and I won't use the word tragic because there are tragedies and then there's tragedy. But if you're a car lover, there's a certain element of tragedy to the story of the sinkholes with the Corvette Museum. And I'm going to be speaking with Mariah Hughes of the Corvette Museum at the end of this episode. But can you tell me where the sinkholes alternate brand came from?
Yeah, in fact, the sinkhole happened in 2014, and initially, it was not a joke. It was not funny, and the Corvette Museum, because we had talked about doing something way back then, and they're like, "No, absolutely not." But then in hindsight, it ended up being a great thing for them. Through tragedy came triumph, and it got them a lot of notoriety. And really now the sinkhole is a key part of the tour when you go out there. And so their perspective kind of changed, and over time, they're like, absolutely. And in fact, the Corvette Museum was having their 25th anniversary. They're having a huge weekend. 8,000 plus Corvette enthusiasts were coming into Bowling Green to celebrate. And so we asked for permission to play as the Bowling Green Sinkholes and kind of adopt that moniker on that same weekend. And so Brandon came up with the jerseys and the logos, and absolutely brilliant with the mole. It looks like he's digging, but he's swinging a tire axle, and the whole concept of the jerseys where it looks like Corvettes are buried and some old logos of ours are buried, and it's like this hidden treasure of buried things underneath the sinkhole. And so we played as that for that weekend. Huge success, and we kind of retired it for a couple of years. But to let your listeners know, a little hint, that might be coming back for 2023, kind of a standalone Sinkholes Part 2.
I am a huge fan of teasers on this podcast for sure. So for those who are not familiar with the full story, this was February of 2014. A 40-foot by 30-foot sinkhole opened up essentially under the museum and swallowed, was it 16 cars? I think it was 16 Corvettes that got swallowed up by the sinkhole. $750,000 worth of cars got destroyed essentially. And like you say, it's part of the tour at the museum now. And it was awful for, certainly for that museum, and certainly for, as an institution, that was obviously really difficult for them. Thankfully, no one was hurt. So anyway, but the fact that you all were able to turn that, that terrible event for the museum into this sort of whimsical brand that is now, we're learning, maybe coming back. That's exciting news. So, and then you mentioned one other one that was the Copa de la Diversión brand that you have. So can you tell me about that one?
Yeah, and Copa, I spent 4 years living in the Dominican Republic and spending time in Latin American culture. And while we don't have a huge Latin American population here in Bowling Green, I wanted to participate in that. And so we started doing some research on various names, and a couple other teams had some. So we ended up doing the direct translation of hot rod into Spanish, which is bolitos. So bolitos de Bowling Green. But bolitos has two meanings. It means hot rod and also means meteor. And so with that and working with Brandon, if you notice on our logo, and I encourage those watching to pull it up, it's a different looking hot rod, very vibrant colors, but it also has this glow around it. And that's to signify the meteor. Like the car is an actual meteor coming in. And so you have the glow flames around it. And so we adopted that. Last year was our first year playing as the Bolitos de Bowling Green for 3 games, and we're bringing it back again this year. And then we have some alternate. We've repeated the same jersey and hat this year. We have some alternate ones that perhaps in future years we're going to bring out, just some color flips and different things like that. But it's a great brand, and kids love the vibrant colors. And so we've been able to reach out to the small but mighty Latin American community here in Bowling Green, and it's a great addition to our brand.
Well, I'm looking at it now while you're talking about it, and it absolutely looks like a meteor. I mean, it's not something, not knowing that double entendre in Spanish, I wouldn't have caught that right away. It looked like a car just going fast enough that flames were trailing off the back of it, but it does look like a meteor that's coming right at you. And it's I'm a huge fan of the Copa de la Diversión brands. I'm trying to get better at pronouncing it, but I'm a huge fan of those brands, and this one's really terrific, and I love how it ties directly in with the overall hot rods brand that you have. So obviously there's so much to talk about with this team. I really love how all of the alternate brands sort of support this larger brand of the hot rods in general, right? Like it's all part of a larger narrative. And, this has just been one of my favorite teams to follow because of the place that you all have in your community and because of how much, how cool the brand is. I mean, I just really like the brand as well. I don't know if you saw this yet, but I'm wearing a Hot Rods shirt here that I picked up when I was at the game there in 2019. It's, I appreciate what Bowling Green means to minor league baseball. And so I really have enjoyed the opportunity. You and I have spoken a couple of times in the past, but never really gotten to sit down like this. We met briefly at the game, and then we've talked a couple of times for Sports Logos articles, but to actually have a longer form conversation here with you has been something I've been looking forward to for a while. So I appreciate you, Eric, and I appreciate the Hot Rods, and I appreciate you taking your time out of your morning to chat with me about it.
Absolutely, Paul. My pleasure, and I enjoy it. And there's nothing that I love more than the brand of minor league baseball and the fun that we get to have. I that's what keeps me going and energized, is being able to come up with these fun things and take an idea on paper and make it into reality. And that's the dream. And we keep pushing forward and looking forward to what's to come.
Well, you guys are doing great at it. I appreciate it all. And before I let you go, I'll just ask you, where can people find you and the team on social media and online?
Yeah, bghotrods.com, and social media, Bowling Green Hot Rods, pretty much all across the board. And of course, we have other brands that you can find, like Turbo or Bat Dog and Bourbon and Brewfest, and some other fun things with that. And then my Twitter handle is Baseball Bucket 7. And so you can find me there and give me a follow on Twitter. And hopefully you'll see some of the teasing and various things that I get in trouble with my social media manager. They're like, stop teasing everything. I'm like, yeah, but it gets people interested. So
absolutely,
I get my hands slapped every once in a while, but follow us there. And of course, you can go check out all the merchandise on bghotrods.com and order it through that. And the last plug I'll give on that is I highly encourage all the viewers and everybody, always buy through the team rather than through a third-party site, because buying through the team, it supports the team. The third-party site, we really don't get a whole lot of revenue from those. So support your local team by buying off of their sites.
That's a great tip, and something that I'll repeat in the future as well, because that's something that I try to do whenever I can. Obviously, my favorite thing to do is get to the ballpark and buy it right there at the team store, and then go get myself an ice cream helmet Sunday. So
absolutely.
Eric, this has been great. Thank you so much. And I hope to get back to the Hot Rods again soon, and keep up the great work that you guys are doing.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm very pleased right now to be joined by Brandon Lamarche, who is this is actually a great relationship between a designer and a team here that you don't see too often. Brandon has basically created all of the logos for the Hot Rods, and so that includes the most recent iterations of the primary brand, which is a couple of marks that were added to an already existing suite. But then all of the alternate brands that you associate with the Hot Rods, like the Bolitos, which is their Copa brand, and the Sinkholes, which is the kind of hilarious, kind of tragic brand that that Eric and I were talking about, and that I will talk about with Mariah Hughes from the Corvette Museum after this segment. And then also the Bootleggers, which is a terrific alternate brand. And then also, well, first of all, I'm going to go on and on here. Brandon, hello, and thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
You also created a logo for the 2020 All-Star Game, Midwest League All-Star Game that never happened. The Midwest League All-Star Game that never was. We lost that to COVID, but Eric, we were just talking about this. Eric sent me some helmets with that logo on it. So that is part of the Helmet Sunday collection here in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. So can you talk, just before we talk about the specific logos, can you talk about sort of the relationship that you have with the team and how it was that you became sort of their go-to designer for all of their brands?
So I was still in college at the time, and I had just came back from studying abroad in Australia. And my dad just got a new job as the plant manager for Corvette. So I kind of needed, they just moved away from my hometown up in Michigan. And so I kind of needed something to do for the summer. And luckily there was a minor league team, the Bowling Green Hot Rods there. And so as soon as I got back from Australia, I just called up the front office, asked, say, can I get an interview for a summer job? And they're like, sure. And that's, as soon as I got the interview, I met Eric, and the whole interview process was just us basically spitballing about minor league logos. I just noticed different random trinkets in his office, and I don't think we talked about what job I would have to do the opportunity came. And he just liked our connection through minor league logos and just baseball in general.
Well, I mean, that's super cool, right? Because you don't see it that often in minor league baseball. I mean, often you'll have, the primary brand for a team is created by one of the big design firms out there. And then maybe the Copa brand is in-house, or they work with Major League Baseball, or so for the suite of identities, not just the suite of logos to be created by one person for a team. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool relationship that the Hot Rods have with you as their designer. And I know that since working for the team, you've moved on to become full-time graphic designer, but you've maintained that relationship with that team, obviously, and continue to do their logos for them.
Yeah, it's been pretty fun. It's an opportunity I never thought I would have, because when we started doing this relationship, it was more of I had the skills to do it because I was an architecture major for a couple of years, and before I switched to education. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. And I've been able to not only work for the Hot Rods, but I've done work for the Nashville Sounds and the Peoria Chiefs and a lot of other kind of teams in the area.
So you did we'll talk first about the new marks for the primary brand. You came into a sort of already existing brand. I know that the first one was created by Brandios. The original Hot Rods logo was created by Brandios, and then, as you reminded me just now, the brand in 2016 was created by SME in New York. So you basically created a brand that sort of threw back a little bit to the Brandios version with the sort of classic hot rod. Can you talk about sort of what, having that relationship with the team as a designer, but then having to augment an already existing brand? What's that like for you as a designer?
The really cool part of doing this project was I was actually a part of the team during that transition between Brandios and then their new brand with SME. So I got a kind of that small little background of what that whole process was like and why the decisions were made and whatnot. And then for the team, I kind of realized, and if just talking to, Adam Noose, who was the GM at the time, and Eric, they didn't get a lot of input into the whole design process. So that was kind of a frustration they had, because they had just got a new ownership group, and that's why they changed their brand. They kind of wanted to put their mark on it. And so this whole project was kind of taking the ideas that they kind of wanted to implement at the time and putting it into this new brand, because there were a couple of marks that they just weren't fans of at the time, and they definitely, a couple of the other marks that they still use, definitely grew on them over time. So we were just kind of trying to build off of that existing brand at the time and then make something new. And then, as you said, like maybe do some callbacks to what made the brand successful at the beginning, and maybe even some callbacks to some older teams that were part of Bowling Green throughout their history.
So after you unveiled these two new brands, what was the reception like for you? I mean, you're with the team at the time, and you're sort of watching this happen. How did you track the reaction to the new marks introduced into the suite?
It looked like all positive for the most part. I don't think I really saw anything negative about it. It's just kind of, my style is really kind of a mixture of what made Dan Simon and Brandios kind of really take off, is just that kind of bold and fun designs, something that can stand out at a distance, because that's really important in baseball. You want to be able to recognize a logo from a distance. Mm-hmm. And so I think people really just connected it with a little better than some of the previous logos. Like the previous car logo just wasn't something that people connected to us so much, so it wasn't really utilized as much. And we really went back to the classic car aesthetic that the 2016 brand was just missing, that kind of car feel. And so we wanted to really build upon, why hot rods were popular, why hot rods are such an important part of Bowling Green.
Yeah, the 2016 car was almost just a little too stylized, right? Like it almost lost from a distance anyway. It lost that sort of recognizability as a car itself, even. So calling back to that. So it was interesting though that you created a couple of marks. You created that, the car mark, and then you created the word mark that goes with it, but that they still left some of the previous logos from that suite in place. So it was interesting. I'm sure that was interesting for you as a designer to create new sort of primary marks for an already existing brand. So it's a very interesting and different challenge from a design perspective. Now I want to know, was it an emotional challenge for you, especially since your dad had that connection to the Corvette, industry in Bowling Green, the Sinkholes logo, which, I struggle with how to describe it, right? Because it's like you use the word tragedy because it was a very bad situation for a lot of people, but there was no human life lost. And there was, it's at a certain point, it's just stuff. But, it obviously was expensive stuff and important stuff to people. And the fact that these cars were lost to a sinkhole opening up under I'm laughing about it. I don't mean to be laughing about it.
No.
But for you to be asked to create a logo that sort of tongue in cheek commemorates this, this car tragedy, we'll call it a car tragedy, after, with your family's connection to the industry, was there, did you have any like misgivings about that at all in that process?
No, not at all. It was actually really funny because my dad's first day on the job as plant manager of Corvette was the Corvette sinkhole day. So he literally goes into work, introduces himself to everyone. And then all of a sudden, he hears all this commotion across the street, which is the museum is across the street from the plant. And he has to go on national TV to explain what happened. And it's just so funny that, he never would have thought in a million years he would be, standing up, talking about the Corvette on the national stage in that kind of situation. He probably thought it would be, if he were ever to do that, it would be something different. So the fact that I got to be able to kind of create an identity, which that's probably my most difficult project. How do you make a minor league identity over what you would consider a tragic situation, but it's actually a very typical situation in Bowling Green because there's so many sinkholes through all the limestone and cave systems around there that you actually have to, they have sinkhole insurance there, which is pretty funny. So it's more of it was just kind of a fun situation to create something that, normally you wouldn't think would be something that you would make a team around. So It was just something very fun. I think my dad got a real big kick out of it. He's got a bunch of sinkhole stuff in his collection now.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And, it's funny. I always talk about how I learn something about America as I do this podcast, right? Like I'm constantly learning about, parts of the country. I've been to a game in Bowling Green, did not know that sinkholes were A, common, and B, that sinkhole insurance was a thing. So, so that's pretty good information to have now in the lexicon. Another brand that you did was the Bootleggers. This is something that people associate with Kentucky. This is not new information. I think that there is alcohol, specifically bourbon, I guess, in Kentucky. The Bootleggers identity is the wackiest of all of them, right? Like it's got the sort of old timey bootlegger guy and it's got the barrel and everything. So you were asked to create something that, based on sort of the other work that I've seen from you, is a little bit outside, what you would normally do. The sort of wacky cartoony logo is a little bit different from the other stuff that you've done. So was that a challenge for you?
It was at the time because that was my very first introduction to sports design. I was working with the team as a member of the front office at the time when we came up with the idea, and it came up with the idea at the end of a homestand, and it was a very long homestand, and we were just sitting in the break room sipping on homemade moonshine from our season ticket holders, and we were just coming up with fun ideas of promos we could do the following year. And our GM at the time was like, what if we did an identity where we were the moonshiners? And then it was because the moonshine we were drinking, and it was an idea that every week it just kept coming up and it snowballed until it's like, all right, let's go ahead, let's do something and let's do this. And I think eventually we did Bootleggers because we thought it would be a bit better to sell through minor league baseball at the time. I think West Virginia ended up doing a moonshiner's identity later, but it was kind of the first idea of let's make a beer related or alcohol related branding that actually connects to the area. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And it really took off. I never expected it to be so successful as it is, and it be such an important part of the hot rods is identity and their promotions.
Can you tell me about how you made that transition from being a front office employee to creating an alternate brand for this team? What that, I mean, once you created the first alternate brand, it seems like it's a natural progression to start doing more work for them. But what was the buildup to, hey, I'm doing this one job for the team, but I also have these other skills that could be of use? And was there resistance, or did you just have to show them some ideas? How did you get them to accept, like, hey, I'm going to do some design work for you?
Yeah. So so when I got hired just to be kind of an intern, just kind of be everyone's sort of assistant. I was really interested in the industry. That's why I switched from architecture to education. I was trying to get opportunities to either go into coaching or go to some sort of baseball job. So I was really more of an assistant / ticket sales. And I had to wait about a week just to get, acclimated with how everything worked and get training on how to be a ticket sales guy. So I was just kind of not a whole lot to do. And we had some promo meetings, talk about the homestand, like how are we going to sell tickets? How are we going to, approach, how we would sell to different businesses and stuff. And I was just coming up with, ideas of, well, maybe we could do a giveaway like this. And I actually, drew it out and designed it because I still had all my design background from college. And I just walked into Eric's office one day, say, hey, I have a couple ideas here. I'm just going to shoot my shot here and see if you like it. And he literally just slapped me in the face. It was like, these are amazing. He really liked the ideas that I came up with. None of them got used at the time, but he just liked the fact that I had that back. He didn't know I had that background at the time. He didn't know I drew, logos and stuff since as a kid, and that developed into a passion of mine, even though we kind of bonded over logos and stuff. So it was just really just say, hey, I have this, I can do this. I don't know if you like it either or what, but that's kind of how it all started. And I started actually doing design work for them, that day before I even got trained on doing ticket sales. So I became a big part of my job moving with the team.
Very cool. I think one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by logos is, my background's in graphic design as well, but mine is more sort of like information design, publication design, that sort of thing. And it's, I like those kinds of design because there are rules, and yes, there are rules in logo design, and we've talked a lot about them on this podcast, but like you can point to, in publication design, you can point to like legibility, readability, hierarchy, contrast, like all this stuff that makes sort of for effective design. Whereas I think with logos, it's, and like I said, there's rules, and there's still color and contrast and type and all this stuff, and readability from certain distances and all this. But with logos, more than any other aspect of design, you can show it to someone who has a background or who does not have a background in graphic design, and they either like it or they don't, right? Like there's no arguing with someone about, well, you should like this logo because, right? Like it's just like they look at it and they either like it or they don't. And especially when it's representing their organization, their team, their, company that they started or whatever. So I always have, logo designers, and I think it's why I do a podcast about logos, when I find good logos and tell their story, because it's like, I'm always so amazed by the ability of designers to create something where their clients go, yes, that's it. Like, yes, that's it. So anyway, I'm amazed by logo designers. So it's very cool that you shot your shot there, right? Like, and took that to Eric, and that Eric is the sort of person to be like, hey, this is great. Let's work together. Let's cultivate this a little bit and see where it goes, because obviously it's gone great places. The other thing so the last one I wanted to ask you about obviously is the Bolitos. I learned from talking with Eric that Bolitos it's a double entendre in Spanish, and that it means hot rods and asteroid or comet, I guess. So the car itself that you created looks like a comet sort of coming at you, with the tail behind it. But that was, what were your considerations in creating that logo?
So at the time I did that, I had just completed the previous year with the sounds. I did the Vihuelas. So I had a little bit of a background what minor league baseball was trying to do with Copa, and what they were wanting the designers to do. They were very pushing, let's make these very bold and vibrant. And so we had come with the Bolitos idea the season after Fresno did the lowriders. So our whole idea or they had just announced they were going to be the lowriders the season before we were going to do Bolitos. So we had to scrap all our ideas of, we can't do lowriders. So what we ended up doing was, since we found the double entendre, I was like, hey, this also means, some sort of, cosmic asteroid kind of space theme. Let's combine that with how hot rodders in the Latino community, like to just paint these vibrant, very detailed, awesome designs onto the cars. And so it was a great, marriage between the two of these stars and fires and flames. And we can add that also, with the hot rods and flames, just kind of combine all those elements together. And we picked a non-traditional hot rod looking car, just so we can get a branch off a little bit and not also look like a lowrider. And it just kind of snowballed into what you see on the hat is just this flaming comet asteroid car coming right at you. There's very vibrant colors and little astral stars and stuff. It's pretty fun.
So I was there when I went to a game in Bowling Green. It was in 2019, and I believe that was before the Bolitos brand was out. And so, because I definitely would have picked up some Bolitos stuff there when I was there, because I really enjoy that brand for sure. So I really enjoy this story in particular because one of my favorite things about the hot rods is the place that they have in the community, right? Like in the work that they've done with supporting, and this is something Eric and I talked quite a bit about in the previous segment. So I love that, one of the things they've done is that they've cultivated a relationship with a sort of homegrown designer who is part of the community. And it's very fitting for the Bowling Green hot rod story. So I appreciate, you taking your time and coming on and talking about all the work that you've done with the team. So thank you for spending time with me this morning on that. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Lamarche32. That's the number 32. Or you can go on my website. My portfolio is 32designs.net.
Okay. And we'll put those in the show notes for sure. Brandon, thank you very much. And I very much want to get back to a hot rods game. So I hope to get to meet up with you in person. And this is something, I say this almost every interview, but all of those logos, the Bolitos, the bootleggers, the sinkholes, and of course the new hot rods ones, I want to see all of these on Helmet Sundays there, right? Like I would get like 5 things of ice cream when I was there because of all these great logos that would look really good on a Helmet Sunday. So
yeah, keep pressuring Eric, you might get it.
I will, he's been so generous with me in other ways already. So we'll see if I can't press my luck with that a little bit. Brandon, thanks very much and look forward to seeing more of your work out there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul.
Hi there, everyone. Welcome back. I'm very pleased to be joined now. This is a special treat here. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mariah Hughes, who is the Senior Media and Marketing Specialist with the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green. Mariah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me what is the connection between Bowling Green and Corvettes specifically?
We need to travel back to 1970s for a little bit. So in 1979, the Corvette was built in St. Louis, Missouri at the assembly plant there. They were outgrowing that plant and they needed space to grow. The assembly plant here in Bowling Green sat vacant for a few years as it used to build air conditioning units for Chrysler. The city of Bowling Green owned that plant, reached out to General Motors and said, hey, we think we have the perfect place for you if you wanted to move your production here. We're right on I-65, just an hour from Nashville and an hour and some change from Louisville. We would love to have you if you're welcome to come here. So GM said yes, and the assembly plant moved to Bowling Green, Kentucky, and officially started production of vehicles to be delivered to customers in 1981. There was a little brief period where they did some training with their staff, etc., before that happened. So the Corvette has been built in Bowling Green, Kentucky since 1981.
All right. And then the museum then, well, how long was it since after that move happened and then the museum opened?
So the museum was actually started by a gentleman named Terry McMahon, who was a part of NCRS, which, if you're familiar with that, it's the National Corvette Restorers Society. He approached the NCRS convention, there we go, and told them that he had an idea for a library and archives to be built, that NCRS would keep a record of all of the Corvettes ever made. This process started not long after the assembly plant had moved to Bowling Green. Just a library and archives is what we started with. That process continued to grow. More people decided to join that movement of making that library and archives come to fruition. Then a gentleman by the name of Ray Quinlan said, well, if you're building an archive, how about I give you my 1953 Corvette and you can build a museum around it? And so the process then switched from a library and archives to a museum. And the museum officially opened almost a decade later in 1994 on Labor Day weekend at our location now.
All right. And then, so flash forward until 2009, the Bowling Green Hot Rods baseball team opens up. They went with an automotive theme. They couldn't exactly tie it to Corvettes because, all sorts of copyright and ownership issues there. But when the team, established its identity, it obviously had to do with this close tie to the automotive industry. Did you all have any sort of relationship with the team, or was there any conversations with them when that happened?
I was not here in 2009, so I can't speak to the fact that there were any specific conversations with the Bowling Green Hot Rods, but Bowling Green is Vet City. So we're not just the home of Corvettes, we're also the headquarters for Holly Performance, if you're familiar with that as well. And then we have Beach Bend Drag Strip here in Bowling Green too.
So there's a lot of sort of automotive stuff going on for sure. Is there a relationship with the team now?
Yes, actually, we do have a relationship with the team. In 2019, they moonlighted as the Bowling Green Sinkholes for a game during our caravan event. So every 5 years, the museum has a caravan for both international and domestic travelers and Corvette owners to all caravan together to Bowling Green for one big celebration to celebrate milestone anniversaries at the museum. And for that event, they switched over to play as the Sinkholes for our wonderful Corvette audience to enjoy.
So it's possible we've talked about the sinkholes a little bit already on this episode, but could you tell me from the museum's perspective, the sinkhole story?
So at 5:39 in the morning on that day, we had a 35 feet deep sinkhole that opened up and swallowed 8 of the museum's cars on display. Some would consider that a tragedy in the Corvette world. However, we think that we made lemonade out of a horrible situation.
It's certainly the brand that the team came up with to
Yes.
commemorate that incident was really, I mean, pretty funny, even though, especially for car lovers, it was pretty tragic.
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to that game?
I did. I quite enjoyed that game as well. They had trivia and activities, and everything was themed around the museum and the Corvette hobby.
So if I'm visiting Bowling Green and I go to the National Corvette Museum, what's the take home message that you want me to leave with? What would if I'm giving an elevator speech to my buddies after I get back from a trip to Bowling Green and I tell them, hey, I went to the Corvette Museum, and they say, oh, what'd you take away from it? What's the message that you want me to leave with?
This is where adrenaline meets tradition. So we have everything from experiences to all of the Corvette history that you could ever imagine. And we celebrate the past, present, and future of the Corvette.
And when I come to the museum, what kind of hands-on things could I do? Is there anything like, can I get in a car, or can I touch the cars in any way?
You can't touch the cars back in the gallery spaces. However, you do get pretty close to them in those exhibits. We do have our C6 racing simulator where you can test your luck on a virtual track in our lobby. We're also home to the Corvette store and eat-in restaurant. And then we have the NCM Motorsports Park just across the street where you can get behind the wheel and test your luck on a real track.
Sounds kind of awesome, actually.
It is.
Yeah. So, well, gosh, I've sort of covered my questions here. Is there anything I'm not asking about the museum that you think baseball fans who are visiting Bowling Green should know about?
There's nothing more American than baseball and Corvettes, that's for sure.
I think that's true. And ice cream and a helmet.
Yes.
Mariah, this is very cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about the museum and the all the activities that you have there and the relationship to the baseball team. It's a fun link between the team and the community that I really enjoy. And my Baseball Palooza road trip has been to Bowling Green, but we didn't make it to the museum. So I think we may have to get back there and do that again.
Yes, you'll have to stop by, and hopefully I'll see you at a Hot Rods game.
That sounds great. Mariah, thank you so much. I appreciate
You're
it.
very welcome.